At this time, I would like to call the February 5th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting to order. And with that, please let the record show that all council members are present. Councilmember Oxiger is attending remotely. First up, we have item number 1, discussion of city-sponsored events and a presentation by Assistant City Manager, Mrs. Johnson-Newton.
Good evening. I guess it's officially evening, council, staff, and community members. My name is AJ Johnson-Newton, and I'm here today to walk us through a discussion about city-sponsored signature events. Next slide, please. So this slide just really provides us a roadmap for our discussion this evening. So essentially, I'm going to provide a brief recap of the presentation, a really brief recap of the presentation that I did on October 2nd, or me and CES staff did on October 2nd, talking about some of our retooling efforts that we're doing in the department. I will talk through what our current signature event looks like today, and I will explain what that means here in a moment. I'll provide you some data. We'll talk a little bit about the feedback from the survey that we actually did in September, the Community Enrichment Services Survey, and the direction that we're seeking from staff, and then the next steps that would come from that direction that we receive, or excuse me, the direction from council that we would set our next steps. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this conversation really started on October 2nd when I came before the council and we were talking about what has been going on in community enrichment services for the past 5 years. And so 2 pieces of that presentation are going to play into our conversation today. One of them is we talked a lot about how we want to move forward and shape our activities using data, right? And the data that is driving this discussion came out of the community survey, which basically what we heard is that the public wants more opportunities to connect. And so that's a really long way to say that they want to do more events, right? And so as we went back as a staff and thought about how we could meet that desire in a more timely fashion, meaning this year, the question became, could we put our resources toward that we have now for one signature event and maybe spread those across multiple events? And so that's what we're asking the council tonight. And that, just to be clear, we're just asking you for the direction. We're not asking you to plan the events. I think, in fact, we will take whatever direction we get back, and then we'll make a stop with the cab next. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, one of the reasons that we're bringing this forward now primarily is that if you're going to ask people to provide feedback, they're usually expecting some sort of timely response. And so with our signature event, we know that it requires a lot of advanced planning. We know that we need early direction. And then the other piece is that if we are going to make a change and try to do it this year, it would impact the event we already have planned. And so in order for us to move forward, we would need to contact the vendor to let them know that there was going to be a change. And so for full disclosure for the council, we do have to notify our vendor tomorrow if we're going to move forward. With that said, I'll just put this out early. With that said, as we go through the discussion, if council comes back and says, we're really not ready to make that decision, that's okay. That means we'll just do status quo for 2026, and this discussion is really about 2027. So we're clear on that. And then the other component, which I'll get into more later, is that the way that we fund this particular event that we are putting on the table for the council to consider a change, the funding that we use, we're expecting that it's going to fluctuate and we may have reduced funding. So there is another piece to consider. So next slide, please. So the signature event that we're talking about is the 4th of July. And so one of the things that I want to say to the council is that the defining of the 4th of July as a signature event is really intentional because of the fact of the way that we fund it through the lodging tax, which is really designed to not only be for community events that are going to attract visitors to the city. So in order for us to have the same conversation, when I say signature event, I'm talking about the 4th of July, where we have the drones, where that's innovative, where we're expecting not only are we going to have people from our community, but that people will want to come in, versus like a community event like Egg Extravaganza, where that's really for our residents. So that's the reason for the delineation. So some facts about the 4th of July celebration. So right now, we would consider that our primary signature event. The city's role is we do everything currently. So we plan, we coordinate, we staff it, whether that's with our staff in-house or if we have a third-party vendor. We do the permitting, the logistics, and all the on-site operations. And so last year, the lodging tax is the primary way that we fund this event. It cost us $117,175. So it is a big ticket event. That, as I mentioned, is the primary way that we pay for that event. There is some general fund costs, which I have estimated up there, which is about $5,900. Where that came into play last year is for staff time. And so the reason why it says actual for lodging tax and estimated for general fund cost is because currently we don't necessarily code staff time out to be able to call it related distinctly to the 4th of July event, but I can do some estimation to get there close. So since we spent that $123,000, when we're looking at, okay, we know that the community is asking for more events. We have this significant event with a hefty price tag that we estimate about last year we had 2,000 people. That's between residents and visitors. That comes to a cost about $61.50 per person to put on that event. So then the question becomes, can we potentially use those dollars to maximize our impact on other events rather than just focusing on one? Next slide, please. So I mentioned this already, but I just wanted to give you the hard data, like with the community survey. So community events are like well received. That was our highest rated activity. 80% of people said that was very positive when they came, and that, according to the people that responded to the survey, that's the way that most people interact with us in the city. Interact with us, meaning community enrichment services. And so, again, when we're looking at how we can be responsive to what we're hearing from the residents, and knowing that they want to do more events, it seemed logical to put this question before the council. We have this significant event with a significant cost, and if the council had interest in maybe shifting those resources to multiple events, we think we could do that this year. So, next slide, please. So, what that would look like, first we'll stick with like status quo, right? So right now, the benefits of the 4th of July, it's like we have one large event that brings the community together. And obviously the tradition behind the event to the community is very important. In some ways, we can focus most of our planning, just on this one large event. And another, I would say, positive is the fact that it's funded. It says historically funded in part by lodging tax, but in the most recent years, it's been primarily funded by lodging tax. So it does take some pressure off of the general fund. And then again, when we're thinking about the purpose of the lodging tax dollars, fewer cities are hosting large-scale 4th of July events. So we believe this event can increase regional draw. Some considerations why this may not be a direction that the council would want to continue is that it is really occurring once a year. It does use a significant chunk of staff time and resources, and it is more expensive for us to staff on those days because it is a city holiday, and so that would be a day that people traditionally would have off, and so there's like overtime costs and premiums and things like that. So, and I would also say even with the third-party vendors, there's usually some sort of premium, right, attached to that holiday. And then there's less flexibility for us to like scale it from year to year. So, next slide, please. So if the council was interested in having those resources shifted into what we would call more of a year-round signature events where we would move away from the 4th of July, and what we would anticipate is either scaling up some of our already pre-programmed events that would be community events that we would try to raise to the level of a signature event, or maybe come up with another one. But essentially, we would like commit to 2, maybe 3. is that it would allow us to be more creative to design events to attract residents and visitors. We'd have like different types of events that we could work through. We could distribute them across the year. So for this, because we have limited staff, we can kind of have these high periods of focused activity and then a lull, and then high periods of focused activity and then a lull. And then again, I mentioned this, we have some flexibility to design the event. And we would also have the ability to align the events with the lodging tax, because as I mentioned, what we would like to do is to shift the lodging tax funds to this multi-event model. So we don't increase our costs, we just move the money to maximize the impact of the dollars. Some things that you'd probably want to consider if we went to that is like, we'd no longer have that one event that creates that, like that one day citywide movement, right? Or moment, excuse me. And then of course, it would require more coordination across multiple departments and things like that, because we'd be doing more. And then the scale and the frequency of the events would have to align with the lodging tax, or the collection of the funding and our planned capacity. Next slide, please. So I've been talking a lot about funding, so I just want to do like a lodging tax 101. So it's collected on overnight stays in the city. The current lodging tax rate is 1%. It is scheduled to decrease to 0.08% beginning April 2026, so we are anticipating a decrease in collection. The funds are supposed to be used to support tourism, promotion, and community events. And so the 4th of July event, as I mentioned, has been primarily funded by this. And one of the things that, if the council was interested in shifting to this multiple signature events kind of profile activity, I would say that it will probably require a separate discussion with the council to talk about how we allocate lodging tax funds, because we would need to plan out what the dollars we would need to be able to put these events on, and then make sure that we had a mechanism to apply for those funds and ensure that we'd have priority for them. But I would say that would come later, depending on the decision that the council makes tonight. Next slide, please. So another way that our signature events would be funded is the general fund. And so as I mentioned earlier, that typically when we put on events, they do create costs above and beyond normal operations, not always. So for example, my community enrichment program supervisor is planning for the 4th of July. If she's doing that during her normal workday, we've already accounted for that time, right? But when I have to bring her in on the 4th of July to manage the event, or you know, if the lodging tax fund is not enough to cover it, then sometimes we'll have to buy supplies and materials and then some professional services. So the way I would say that we've been funding the signature event is the lodging tax is the first source, and then the general fund has been acting as the backstop. Next slide, please. And then, though this hasn't shown up in the last couple of years for the 4th of July in terms of sponsorships and partnerships, we thought it was important to mention it, because that is an opportunity for us to share and offset some of the costs to us as a city. And so that is something that we are looking towards doing more of, or at least going out and trying to build those relationships and finding those sponsors. But the one thing that I would submit to council is that it's not guaranteed, and it's going to vary by event, and it may or may not make a significant difference in our cost. So when we're talking about funding in this concept of the signature event, lodging tax would be the largest component, and then general fund, and then if we can find the sponsorships and partnerships as we start to establish more relationships with our community partners, that would come in to help offset. Next slide, please. So these aren't necessarily questions that I need answers to, but I thought it would be helpful as you guys start to do your deliberations in terms of, do we stay with the status quo and we continue to do the 4th of July this year? Or do we want to look at, you know, directing staff to go ahead and move away from the 4th of July and do some multi-signature events? These were just things that we thought would be helpful for to kind of form that lens. Next slide, please. So basically what we are asking for is, do you want us to continue the current approach? Do you want us to maintain what we have now and have the 4th of July as the primary signature event? or do you want us to shift to a year-round signature event approach? So we would move away from the 4th. We would, like I said, at least commit to 2, maybe 3 events. They would intentionally be designed so they would meet the criteria to be funded by lodging tax. So it would be broader than, like I mentioned earlier, our community events. And then if that is the desire of the council, then we would have another conversation with the council to talk about the allocation of the lodging tax, because we would need some direction on that. Next slide, please. Okay. That concludes my portion.
Any clarifying questions? Councilmember Steinmetz.
It seems to me last year's at 2,000 was a decline in attendance over the previous 2 years. I don't know if we actually know that or not, but is that the impression, and is there any suggestion as to why it might have declined?
You are correct. We don't actually do hard counts of residents. We're not sure. Some of the things that have been proposed is that people are, because it's at nighttime, people are having their own activities and are not wanting to, leave and come to some sort of event. But we don't have any like hard data to substantiate why attendance might have declined. But that does seem to be a reasonable assumption. That might be one of the reasons, is that people just have their own thing going on.
And the tree lighting and then the burning boat, while not the same events, and it's sort of the first years for those events coming back up, at least in those locations, seem to be very well attended. Again, my estimate is probably a couple of thousand at each or more. Why would those be attended and these not? Any insight into that? And the burning boat, of course, is by ticket and still did pretty well. The tree lighting was not by ticket.
Yeah, I would be guessing, right? I'm not sure why there was more interest this year in the holiday tree lighting, maybe because it was a new event for the city, in the way that we put it on. But since you mentioned holiday tree lighting, one thing I would say is, while we're not maybe necessarily at the point where we would publicly say, if the council does decide to have us shift our resources to this multi-event approach, the holiday tree lighting would definitely be one that would be on the table to scale up, because we know that we were able to draw people in last year without the same amount of resources that we may have if we are able to fund it differently.
But implicitly, what you seem to be suggesting is that the tree lighting was better attended than the 4th of July show?
It was, because also the 4th of July, the 2,000 number, and because you were there, people are not there the whole time. So we had 2,000 people over, I think it's like a 4 or 5 hour window, whereas the tree lighting was much tighter. So you had a lot of people there at once, for one thing, whereas 4th of July, they were in and out.
Okay, thank you.
Does the $5,900 estimate, does that include officer or police department staff time?
It does not, because they're going to be staffed up just because of the holiday, and our primary support for security is through Seattle's Finest and Allied Security. Obviously PD is available if we need them to respond, but their overtime is just really in relation to the holiday itself, not for the event.
Okay, thank you. Is my next question, is there any estimate on how much, or how much is spent in businesses in town on the 4th of July, as opposed to doing 3 or 4 other events?
We've not had that data available to us. I don't even know if we've asked the question to see if the revenues have increased for, proprietors, because we have the 4th going on.
Okay. And finally, with the lodging tax going from 1% to 0.08%, is that correct? So there's going to be a huge shortfall come next year's event that is going to impact our general fund. And we've already got a budget shortfall.
It doesn't affect the general fund, Councilmember Nutting. what it means is that previously, and if you can go to that slide, AJ, we were getting, I want to say, between 125, 135 a year, roughly. It's now going down to 90, and so we would budget appropriately for that. But no, it doesn't affect the general fund.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I got this brief little endorphin rush when you mentioned like cost per visitor or however you, because that's the first time I've wondered about that for a long time. Thank you for that. But it raises a question, and I don't want you to speculate, but just internally, it seems to me that the 4th of July and the tree lighting may be intrinsically different goals. Does the city have any kind of thinking as to, the purpose of each? Does break that out in some fact? Do you see what I'm driving at? Is that Councilmember Nutting mentioned, the talk of, tourism or business traffic, and perhaps the intent of each of these events is different. Do you guys think of them differently, is what I'm trying to get at? And if not, if that's too vague, never mind. Yeah.
If I am understanding your question, I would say no. We don't necessarily think of them differently in terms of the outcomes that we want to achieve, right? The reason for the event may be different, but in terms of, providing that connection point, trying to make sure that we are planning events that the residents actually want, hopefully in the lens of like a signature event, being able to draw more attention from outside of the city to attend, to us is more about the outcomes rather than focusing on the individual events, if I understand your question. Do you want me to clarify? I understand now. I'm sorry. So the reason why when we're talking about signature events and residents and visitors is really about the funding, right? So the lodging tax is designed to promote tourism, and so we could not, in theory, use lodging tax for like the eggs extravaganza. That is very much a resident-driven event. But when you're talking about the 4th of July, where you have drones, where you have people that may be interested in attending from outside of the city, the purpose of that event is for our community, and to bring people into the city. So the reason why I'm making the distinction really is tied primarily to the funding and the scale of the event.
I'm going to go to Councilmember Desmoni.
Thank you, AJ. I also was excited to see some statistics at $6,000 a minute. My endorphins also went up for the drone show. My question is, I don't believe there's regional draw, but how can we, through the fireworks show, know where those people came from? There's no information capture, so I'm not going to ask you a question I know you can't answer, but would you see the fireworks show being worth that amount of money when we can't capture the data or get an accurate count? Or do you feel, since this is what you do, it could be spent better on other things instead of just this one event?
So what I would say is, it's not like, from our perspective, it's not a value statement of like what event is better. What we're trying to respond to is that we heard from the community, we want more events. We know we have constrained resources. We have the 4th of July, which because of the entertainment, the drones, it's like $80,000. It's a huge cost. So when we sat down to say, how can we address what we're hearing, it seemed logical to us to put the 4th of July forth to the council for consideration, really because of the cost, not related to the value, right? So yeah, it's not a value space for us. It really is, we're hearing that you want more. We have constrained resources. Here's a way we think we can address the want, but it's going to require a trade-off, assuming the council agrees.
I think I'd like to add to that, if I could. I would like to draw the distinction between, even though Councilmember Harris is right, we do not normally say this event cost X dollars per attendee. If we did do that, no other event would come even remotely close to how high that number is.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm going to go to Councilmember Bloss before coming back.
Thank you. Follow up to Councilmember Nutting's question about the not impacting the general fund. If the tax revenue for lodging tax goes down to $90,000 a year, we would never be able to throw a celebration like we've done in the past, and we would not even be able to afford the drone show going forward. So, right, we would not use general fund money to augment that, right? So
Yeah, the existing contract for drones expires this year. So if you said, we love the drones, we love the 4th of July exactly as it is, and we only have $90,000, then we would have to have a conversation about scaling down that event.
yeah, okay.
So I would say it's not going to be 5 hours long. We're not going to have 2 or 3 bands. Like, I mean, we would scale it down because I cannot foresee, unless you told me it's the most important thing to you, me scrambling to find general fund dollars for one afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's what I thought. And so that means we don't really have the option to continue as it's been in the past, unless we really want to do it. But yeah, not using lodging tax. Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
I want to check here to see if Councilmember Oxker has any questions.
Mayor.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Will you say it again?
Stein. No.
Okay, thank you. Going back to Councilmember Simons.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up what you said about other cities are cutting back their events. Are you aware of any cities around here? Have there been any conversations with cities about trying to combine events so it's not all about Des Moines and actually we're pulling people in? I know SeaTac is considering whether they're going to do drones again or not.
I would say my comment about cutting back events is like historically, because it used to be almost every city did have a 4th of July event, and it has seemed like post-COVID, many cities are electing to no longer do 4th of July events. And that is a great idea if there is interest in us trying to continue the 4th of July, maybe after 2026, to look into some regional partners to see if we could put on the event and share cost. So that hasn't been addressed now because really the 4th of July event has like just been city owned, but that's certainly something we could explore and maybe there would be interest.
Okay, I had a couple questions. Thank you. You addressed the split. I think that Councilmember Desmoni brought up of, do we know of the 2,000, how many were visitors from out of town and how many were residents? And I think the answer is we're not sure. So we're also meaning we're not sure if that money was truly meeting the goal of promoting folks from coming in from out of Des Moines to attend this event. I also want to ask, when looking at the option number 1, it seems like to me that that's a recent history of how the lodging tax advisory money has been spent. But in prior years, it was spread across more events. Is that correct?
What I would say, just because I want to make sure that I get this factually true, in terms of the 4th of July event, that did used to be hosted in what I would say a way that was much more aligned with the partnership. Right. So when we had fireworks, it's my understanding that those were donated, if that's the appropriate word, that there were different various community groups that were hosting activities. And so the city didn't absorb the bulk of the cost, which in my mind would probably make the case that we were not using as much lodging tax funds. What I understand is once the decision was made to no longer have fireworks because whoever was providing them could no longer do that, it sounds like there was some sort of research done and it seemed way cost prohibitive for us. And at the time the drones made more sense. That's when the shift to funding the 4th of July primarily by lodging tax happened. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yes, a little bit. I think that I'm trying to get at some history because I believe that the lodging tax money was spread across multiple events up until about 4 or 5 years ago.
Well,
I think it went on,
Until 4 or 5 years ago, the RTA actually took 100% of our lodging taxes.
okay, okay.
And then they would distribute it to community organizations.
Mhm.
So then the city made the decision, the city council and the lodging tax committee, to retain those funds and for the city council to make the decisions on where that was going to go.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let's turn now to talk about those options, going back to options 1 and 2. I think we're looking at a straw poll here. Is that what you're looking for? Comments? Councilmember Steinmetz?
I got to tell you, I find this a really tough decision. I think it is a good community event. I don't know why it seems to have tailed off last year, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't come back up again this year, particularly given what we've seen more recently at the tree lighting and at Burning Boat. So I think that the big events that pull the community together are really good, valuable things. The cost is a lot, and I appreciate that. So I'm really kind of straddling, do we want to make this decision right now? I would have greatly preferred if we could have at least given it a week for people in the community to respond. We love the drone show, we want to keep it. We hate the drone show because it's drones and not fireworks, or we just don't need to do any event at all. But we don't apparently have that time. So I'm just really struggling with this decision at this point because I like the event and I think it's an important event. And the entire time that I've lived here in Des Moines, since when I moved in 1998, I think it was, there's been a 4th of July show, and it's been a good community event, COVID accepted, of course. But and I like the idea that the community comes together in a big sense. So I'm really trying to weigh that out. I don't know.
Councilmember Nutting?
Yeah, I agree. It's a great event, but I think we've heard from the community already, and they want more events. And it's going to be cost prohibitive in years to come. I'd be all for sticking with the event this year and redirecting funds next year and coming up with a better game plan. So that's where I sit.
Councilmember Desmone?
I'm sorry, just to back up, Councilmember Nutting. So I thought we just determined that for 2026 we would not have enough funds to do what we've done in the past. Sorry.
If the council wants to move forward tonight, what we will do is we will scale back the event, the rest of the elements. So we will make it shorter, we will reduce some of the other costs. So I would say for this purpose, you should assume like we can have the event, it'll just be scaled down a little bit, but we'll have the drones.
Councilmember Harris?
Thank you. This is just awkward because this is like a floor wax and a fruit topping. We did not talk about this in the past because it was automatically assumed that these things were placemaking. The item mentions the community desires, but although I did not vote for it, I take seriously the council's desire to make Des Moines the waterfront destination of the Pacific. At some point, we have to actually be intentional about tourism and drawing people from the outside. And this conflates two very different opportunities, providing amenities for residents versus drawing the rest of the universe here. And I don't think you can square the circle in this discussion, but that really needs to be the discussion. What do we want these events to do, rather than just saying, hey, it's a fun event, and boy, I sure hope it brings in a few more people to, local businesses. We have to be intentional about this. But I have not been a fan of the drones, but on the other hand, yeah, I have, but it really should be a question. What do we want these events to be? And I don't think we should make that decision tonight. So I honestly have no strong opinion. I have one thing to say is that the public will be really angry because they have an expectation over this stuff. They have come to expect a certain baseline of stuff. And I don't know what to do about that. But to my mind, we have to make a decision if we're really going to draw more people. Somehow, we have to come to grips with that, those two things. Thank you.
I'm going to check to see if anyone who hasn't spoken yet would like to weigh in. Councilmember Blas.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Out of all years, it's our nation's 250th anniversary of its founding, and to cut the 4th of July event that year is difficult. But at the same time, the lodging tax revenue is going down. We're never going to be able to have the same event as we've had before. I've been to the drone show, and it was fine, but it's expensive. And when I was out campaigning, I talked to a lot of people, and people love community events, and they want more. And we can have events that draw more people. So I think right now I would prefer option 2, but that's a tough one.
Councilmember Oxiger, did you have some comments on this?
Say that I think Councilmember Harris is correct that there is a level of expectation for this year. I think that, this does merit a lot of discussion as to what we could possibly replace it with. So much as I'm concerned about the amount of money that this is taking, I think that, it probably would be wise to continue it for this year. That absolves us of a problem of having to pay a penalty for canceling the contract. Yeah, I think it's just a tough decision. We do also have, it is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, I think it would be very awkward to make the change this year, but would be fully supportive of making a change going forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
And this is really a point of inquiry. Is there anything that would prevent us from trying to find sponsorships to cover that shortfall that's expected in the lodging tax?
I mean, yeah, we can absolutely work on that. I just want to set expectations, which is, you never can guarantee those.
No.
So we could always try. But I'd also say, Tim reminded me, we do have some fund balance in the lodging tax. So, we probably would be able to do this year's event similar to last year, and we'll just use some of that fund balance. But I think we'll also look at some ways we can cut some costs that maybe aren't so noticeable.
And just to follow up, given the expectation that's created in the community, given that it is the 250th anniversary, given that, we may be able to pull off a nice event, even if this ends up being the last one, I think I'm in favor of just keeping the status quo for this year. And I don't think we're precluded from talking to any other city that decides not to do the drones to say, hey, send your people down here. We'd love to have them. And that creates some of the regionalism that we're hoping for. And then if we can find some sponsors that, want to get their logo up on the drones, that's certainly a good way to do it. The drones can do just about anything. So I think for this year, my inclination is to say, let's go ahead, go forward.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and say that my favorite option would be option 2 for a couple of reasons. One is we used to have a corporate sponsor for the fireworks, and after that corporate sponsor dropped, we never succeeded in getting another corporate sponsor to pick up the tab for that. And that's been many, many years. And the cost for fireworks was far less than the cost for drones. And so if we can't get someone to come in at a $40K sponsorship, I doubt that we'll be able to get someone to come in at a $90K unless things have drastically changed. I also think we could put on a smaller 4th of July event with bands, with music, with food, and not have the drone show and be able to spend the $90,000 across 3 or 4 events and be really responsive to folks saying, one and done at a cost per head of $60 per person is not quite meeting the need of all the folks who come forward. Burning Boat, while not put on by the city, it was heavily sponsored by the city, had 400 people to 500 people show up on a day that was freezing cold, and I would guess that it was far less to put on cost-wise than this event. And so I'm looking for some shift in how we're thinking about best use of that money, all in one shot, or can it be used, can it be imagined in a way that succeeds at some of our goals, whether it be a regional draw tourism or amenity to residents. We won't have that opportunity for another year if we spend all this money at one day. I didn't hear a strong enough opinion except for from maybe Councilmember Bloss and Councilmember Steinmetz, and I think I heard from Oxiger, so I want to make sure that everyone has expressed a strong sentiment if they have one. Councilmember Bloss. And then I need to move us on from this topic.
Well, I do like actually the option of canceling the drone show, but still have an event that would save a lot of money, but yet we still would have something for this year. So if that's an option, I probably would go that route.
Councilmember Desmone.
I would also be, I would choose option 2 as well. I don't think we're getting the regional reach with this particular seasonal event that the majority of people do other things, go out and don't go out again. I think we can hit more targets with that. I will speak a little bit to Councilmember Harris. Downtown is dead on the 4th of July. Respectfully, things that happen at the marina stay at the marina, people go to the marina, and they stay at the marina. So the boxes that we're discussing checking are not happening with that event. And I know it's historical and I know it's emotional, but this is not financially something that's checking the boxes that we're being told we would like to have checked. So I would be an option 2 person.
Councilmember Harris first.
Thank you. And at the risk of whatever, is the city prepared to consider the $45,000 pyrotechnic option? Is that even a possibility? 250th anniversary, so on. Split the difference.
We have not vetted going to get fireworks. I mean, we can if that's the direction from council.
I'm just saying that's what they spent in CTEC for the past 2 years, and
on
what it's
drone?
worth.
We did find some research that had happened, and hopefully staff that were here during this time, looking at you, City Attorney George, about the fireworks. And it wasn't necessarily that it was the fireworks that, I mean, the fireworks are expensive, but they are less than the drones. It was the rules that had changed to where you can shoot the fireworks off. And if I recall, it had to be from a barge. And so it was the, I guess the apparatus of where you shoot off the fireworks is what really enhanced the cost or increased the cost, which is why at that time the drones seemed like the more affordable option, in addition to the environmental concerns. But as I understand it, it wasn't necessarily the fireworks, it's how we had to shoot the fireworks off that had changed. It went from land to water.
Thank you. Did I have one more? Councilmember Nutting.
I'll just restate, if we can find the money for this year, I'd be all in favor for sticking with this year. But I think we need to move forward to option 2. So.
Was that clear enough?
No, not really.
No.
I tallied this up. We're at 3 versus 3, and I don't think I'm clear on Councilmember Harris. So No, not clear.
I never voted for the drones. I was trying to find this because I know there is a tremendous sentimentality for the pyrotechnics, and it seems like in this special year, and if it's really sort of a swan song, if a way could be found to split the difference and have it be truly 45K, I think that should be explored, but if there's no will for that, then,
I'm looking for, okay.
but there should be more than just
We
one.
need to know option 1 or 2 before we can explore whether or not the pyrotechnics are possible. So if you would like to move towards one or the other, then I think we could have that conversation.
I didn't know which of the options forwarded that research.
2 would be the one to forward that research.
I'm all in on 2.
Okay, thank you very much. I very much appreciate that.
So then I want to make sure, so we're going to cancel the drone contract, and I have heard some desire to explore if we can pull off an event this year that's a little different, which I cannot in this moment commit to, but we will look at.
Yes.
We will also work to really communicate with the public why this decision was made, and more importantly, what they will be getting in exchange for that. So that's some work for us to do.
Absolutely.
That's what I just said, yeah.
I'd like us to be able to move forward unless we. Councilmember Oxiger.
Thank you, Mayor. Persuaded by the argument that we should probably move to position 2, motion 2.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. At this time, I want to make sure we're going to go forward with Mr. Slevin, or if you want to move to the next.
I think let's get started with Mike's presentation, unless you all want to break for 15 minutes. Thinking about you, Jeremy. You like it to be efficient. We're going to keep going.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Next coming up will be a Parks Projects King County Levy Parks update from Public Works Director, Mr. Slevin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to give you a quick update on what we've been working on for the last, a little bit over last year in our parks projects and how we've been using our King County levy money and the new levy that's changed with the vote from November, which is a very positive thing for Des Moines. So, looking for the clicker. So I want to start with some of our accomplishments from 2025. It was a very busy year. So projects completed. The Memorial Triangle, of course, that I put that first because was one of my favorites. That was a very emotional event for me personally, and I think a lot of the council was there. And I think it's just a great new entrance into Des Moines and how we're doing that. Cecil Powell Park. We had a neighborhood meeting out there this year right after we opened that. And that just it goes to show you the level of work. We have lots of parks for such a small city, but they're really placed close to where our community can utilize them, and they're popular. Fieldhouse Park, that's a much more centralized park, but you see the slide out there. I got some pictures coming up too. We accomplished the SJU Memorial Park lease, and so if you go out there now, you'll see the contractor, the leasee, is got the fields all torn up, doing incredible work out there. I think on the 9th or the 12th is the first field's turf is supposed to be delivered, so they'll start installing it. But all 3 fields have been scraped with the drainage rock in, and then the softer material that the turf sits on top. So it's all good. And it's coming along great. The Sanju Community Garden, that was an internal project. We got rid of the barn, which was a structural safety hazard, and then after we got rid of the barn, we did updates to the garden, additional bins for the garden materials, And then we also did the trail maintenance. And then finally, maybe it doesn't seem as important, but it's the maintenance of these buildings is also really critical. And so the beach park roof, for example, several of the buildings down in the beach park, it's a very shaded area. We live in the Pacific Northwest, large amounts of moss. If you don't stay on top of that, you end up with much larger maintenance costs long term. So we use some of the funds for that. In our design, hit a milestone with the Midway Park design at 90%. We also made a decision to do some additional work and to add a design and then look for funding to build a soccer field. Probably a U12 looks like what will fit up there for the kids. For those of you who go up to the park, you'll see that specifically in that neighborhood's park, soccer is the sport of choice, and those kids really need that amenity. And then the beach park we had a presentation earlier this year, and we're going to have some more pictures here. The beach park is at the 30% design mark and has been funded. It's been funded to get to 60, and so we're going forward with that design continually. On the conceptual design, what are we doing out in the future? We're talking further out, 3, 4, 5 years out. What do future projects look? Much like Beach Park, which is probably out there due to the cost of the scale of the project, probably out there 5, 10 years, somewhere in that range. We looked at where do we need to focus some of our efforts and making sure we can fix different things. One of those things is the Redondo bulkhead. For those of you that have been out there on the very north side of the bulkhead, king tides have from 181 to the end of the bulkhead, it's pretty much failed. It's just a matter of time before it collapses in. It's just over time and that. So we need to come up with a plan on how to replace that and fix that, and then maintain from 181 to like Salties, because that area could still be epoxy fixed, epoxy coated, maybe get another 50 years out of it. And then while we're there, also make some grade separations, those types of things. And this is just totally conceptual. We basically asked our consultants to bring us a document with what is feasible, and then we can go meet with the community. The same thing with the Overlook Park and Cliff. Everyone's aware of how dangerous it is to get the beach park walking down Cliff, the issues with making a right turn coming off of Fifth. How do we address those issues and make that connectivity safe? And so we did the same thing as we did with the Redondo bulkhead. We used some of the levy monies to go out and get some really early conceptual community meeting type documents together so that we can go out and talk to the community in the next year and say, hey, are these the kind of things you would be interested in seeing in this? And then we could start putting together a plan to long-term, long-range fund them. And it's some pictures of some stuff. So we got the opening of the slide. I was bummed because I missed that day. And then we have Cecil Park on the lower, in the center there, and then the flag triangle at Des Moines Memorial Drive. One of the other things we've done with the levy monies this year is we had some really old and beat up equipment, and we had some need for some different types of equipment. We have a lot of trails now that we didn't have last time we had the opportunity to buy some equipment. So we got the skid steer, which is really a critical piece, and it's got like 4 or 5 different attachments we purchased, and so it's very multi-purpose and usable. And it can get into places like when we need to get in and move a log off of the Des Moines Creek Trail. Right, you get it up there, and so we got like a log piece, and then the post hole digger. We do a lot of fences and stuff. Then we got with the expandable tracks, the mini excavator. We got lots of places we can't get a normal excavator in, and so that's a very, very good piece of equipment for maintaining our stuff. Also got a new big zero-turn mower for places for maintaining the parks, and then a portion of we have one large main tractor with a brush cutter arm, a very large piece of equipment, and that piece of equipment works on everything from the parks themselves, like cutting the brush going up Des Moines Trail. It also works on stormwater parts and some of the right-of-way parts, so that was a portion of that vehicle was helped offset with some of the park levy monies because it's used on park properties. This is the Sonju community garden work where we knocked down the barn, and then we built up the areas where they have the facilities they need to maintain decent gardens. The design efforts, upper left, you see what I discussed with the beach park. This was from the 30% presentation to the council. Below that, you see one of the very early design concepts for how we would make it safer to get the beach parks. Basically, we're thinking an off-grade ADA, a drop-down. In plan view, it is on the upper right. So, it starts with, a little bit of a roundabout up there that gets to the overlook. The idea is to connect the overlook park in a safe ADA manner all the way down to the beach park, because they're really kind of one facility, but they're grade separated. And how do we do that safely and still fix the kind of the mess that is Cliff Avenue? That's just an ancient remnant from 1900s, and it needs to be made so where it's safe and compatible with how we use the place now. And then lower right is a plan view of what we're looking at the end of the Redondo Boardwalk Esplanade. So right now we have a bunch of ugly yellow cyber stakes there, and we're looking at creating like an esplanade from the end of where it ends now to 181st. We'd have kind of a termination park for the Boardwalk Esplanade. And then we'd bring from 181st to Salties, where we currently just have a stapled curve on asphalt. We'd bring that up to a sidewalk level, and then retrofit the wall from 181st to Salties, probably some type of an epoxy type finish to get another 50 years out of that and save it. But that north end is really just, if you've seen it, it's almost gone. And then the levy funds, this is how we expended those funds. So Memorial Triangle was about $142,000 for the triangle from the King County levy funds. Midway Park soccer field design is about $25,000. The moss roof removal was $15,000. The parks equipment all in was about $285,000. The Cliff Avenue initial study was $35,000, and the Redondo bulkhead study was about $38,000, and that was our total was $542,000. That wasn't all 1 year levy money. That was there was levy money in account, so we used it in a very good fashion and got it spent appropriately. Now the 2020.
Mr. Slevin, we're going to take a pause here and come back to you. So we're going to break here for our conclusion of our committee of the whole, and then we'll be back for our council meeting at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
2 meetings in one day. I get double credit for this.
At this time, I'd like to call the February 5th, 2026 Des Moines City Council study session to order. We'll start with a Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember J.C. Harris, will you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you. With that, please let the record show that all council members are present. We are in a hybrid format, and Councilmember Oxker will be participating remotely. Now it's time for comments from the public. Because this is a study session, only hearing comments that address items on the agenda today. Other subjects can be heard at our next regular meeting, which is going to be February 12th. And so I have Matthew Duran here. Did you sign up to do comments? Okay, and it's regarding our study session subjects? I don't know. Is it about the... When I look at it, I don't think so. Okay, would you mind coming back next week? Fantastic. Good to see you. Thank you. All right, back to our parks projects and King County Levy Park update from Public Works Director, Mr. Slevin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Continuing with part 2 of the presentation. So we're at, I kind of briefly went over what we accomplished in 2026, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about the levy going forward for the parks. So the 2026 to 2031 King County levy was approved by the voters in August of 25. They did a couple of different things with the levy. One of the biggest, I think, that affects us is they changed the smaller cities, got a larger percentage chunk, which is one of the complaints where a lot of the levy money was going to the larger cities. And so that was really beneficial to us. So we went from about $210,000 a year to $485,000 a year, which is a nice piece, which brings the levy to about $2.9 million over the life. And it's eligible for use under operations, maintenance, and capital of our park facilities. Down here. It's on. Well, one too many. Oh, there we go. All right, so in 26 to 31, we have some proposed priorities. None of these have been, we're taking from what we were working on, some new ideas, and how are we going to program these new monies. The one project that's kind of an overlap into the new King County levy monies is Midway Park and Soccer Field. We've looked at that after finishing Field House and Cecil Powell and the work we've done in the last year as the next major kind of capital parks project. So of course it would be on the top of this list. One of the other things we wanted to address with the council and bring forward is the Founders Lodge at Beach Park. It's in pretty bad shape. We've had a structural analysis done on it, and it's been closed for quite some time. It also has a lot of asbestos. It's also within the floodplain. When we redid the historic buildings down there, which the Founders Lodge is not, we had to, the dining hall was raised 2 feet. And so we'd have to also do that with this structurally deficient building, which would make it very difficult to do. So there's a lot of things around the Founders Lodge, and I have a slide just on that. And then priority capital and in-house projects, these are not yet programmed. So if we have other parks projects, other parks maintenance, need additional equipment, if we wanted to spend some of the levy monies on the soccer field construction or something like that, there's all kinds of things we can do. We can move forward with the additional projects we started feasibility stuff on in the last year. So there's lots of work to do on prioritizing these monies over the next 6 years with the community and with the council. And then the Founders Lodge, I'm going to go a little bit about that. The building is, like I stated in the previous slide, it's structurally deficient. It's environmentally compromised. We did do some asbestos removal, but there's that was critical to do because we did utilize the building for some storage and stuff, so we took out a lot of it. But there's still plenty in there, specifically in the windows, in some of the flooring and those types of things, and some of the plumbing. And then it was built in the 60s, and rehab, as I stated, would also require it to be elevated above the creek, which we did with the dining hall also. Cost comparison, these are really high-level estimates, and how we got to the rehab was we went back, I forget what year it was, but we went back to the dining hall retrofit, took a look at that. It's not apples for apples because that was a historical building and it wasn't in quite as bad shape, so it's kind of offset, I think. And we came up with a square foot number, and then we used Engineer News Record to scale that up to current costs for inflation, and we came up with a square foot number. So that's really a swag number. It was an in-house number. So, but just to give you kind of a scale, it could be 4, it could be 8. We picked 6 to 7. And then demolition, we do have hard numbers on that. We're about $300 to $400K. We've had a contractor come look at it. We have some retrofits to do, some pipes to remove, and then there's also some protection of the creek. So that's why that number is a little bit high up there. And talking with the facilities, people that utilize those facilities, they don't really see something to be programmed for the project, for that building. If we spent the larger amount of money, say we spent $5 million, $6 million, that would we ever see any kind of return on that? Most likely not. The footprint of the building isn't good. Also, the usage isn't good. So it's just one of those things. So we wanted to bring that to the council. No decision has been made on this, but we've put some thought into it. And so most likely, because we do have the other facilities rented for weddings and things like that, we wouldn't do it this summer, but we try to get it at the end of the summer when the creek flows are low. And it doesn't have to be this year, although it would be a good time because it would make the dining hall more, it's not a high piece of the dining hall when they rent it for weddings to have the older building there. So those are those kind of things around that particular facility. And then questions after that.
We'll start with Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. Is the dining hall in any way structurally dependent on the Founders Lodge?
There is a connection for the ADA access that we would have to, if we got rid of the Founders Lodge, we would have to make some changes to how we ADA accessible, but generally speaking, they are separate. There's one beam, if you know, between the two buildings, there's the ADA ramp, and that ramp spans both sides, and that's where the connection is. But it would be pretty, it's very feasible to have that separated and not connect. But as far as knocking one building down, the other one falling down, no, they all sit on separate pilings down into the creek.
It's all a haze now, but, the parametrics made a presentation preliminary on, redoing the beach park. And is the current elevation of the dining hall considered salmon-friendly going forward, or is that something?
Yeah, the dining hall my understanding is the dining hall is at the right elevation out of the floodplain when we get to king tides. And but the dining hall would not be. And so that's why when we did the dining hall, we raised it to 2 feet.
Okay, and I guess the only other, no, in fact, that's it. Thanks.
Councilmember Simons.
Has there been any long-term consideration, particularly in light of redoing most of the beach park that's, you can say, 5 to 10 years out easily, of what else that space could be used for? This is kind of long-term visioning, not cast in stone by any means, but have we gotten to that point?
So, Councilmember Steinmetz, the idea, if you're speaking specifically of the area around, because we are going to lose some, as the design goes forward, we're only at 30% with the beach park, but we are going to lose some lawn. So this would help capture some of that back. And then also, but really it's working with our customers as public work. The customer is the operator of the facility, and figuring out if we're going to do weddings there and whatever that function is, when we go to do the beach park, is what we would meet that, whether it's a waterfront for pictures, a gazebo, is it just landscaping? We don't have that figured out, that level of detail yet.
Some
Al-
things,
Although,
sorry.
although we would, as part of this demolition, if that's what we were asked to do to go forward, we would re-landscape it for now, so that it wouldn't be an eyesore, and that would be part of the demolition costs.
I think also, oh, sorry, if I could just, I think as it relates to future plans, Mike is right, we don't have firm things, but there have been ideas thrown around from the events and facilities staff about actually expanding the outdoor area attached to the dining hall, so you could have like an area for a reception or an area for a cocktail hour that's outside. Right now, we don't have that ability because the Founders Lodge is there. So those are things that kind of get on the table if the building is removed that are not right now.
I'm sorry, and how soon are you looking for the decision about whether to take it down or not?
That really depends on what the council, if the council wants more time to think it over or whatever. I would like to get some direction probably by April at the latest so that we can get bids out. March would be nice, April would be the latest.
Councilmember Blas.
You mentioned 300 to 400,000 for the demolition. That includes the asbestos removal.
Correct, it does.
So it has been, because they would have to tent it, or I don't know how they're going to do it to really, so it doesn't go in.
They would, my understanding is it's from our look, when we had the people come out and look at it, it's all internal at this point, so it's going to be internal to do it. They may have to do the outside of the windows when they pull the windows out, but that's the actual demo contractor and the asbestos contractor's cost, and then some, and then any remediation we need to do to the site.
Okay. And then going back to the Overlook Park and Cliff Avenue connection, I'm trying to visualize with the Marina Steps how that's going to look. Do we still need that, or can you funnel the traffic from the Overlook Park down to the Marina Steps to go down, and without having to redo that path, or people are going to cut through and?
I think it's not an either or, it's a both. Depending on if people want to go down to the boats and down to the quarter deck, or if people want to go from the Outlook down to the beach park.
Okay.
So it's kind of the road where it is now. We don't have the right access. The sidewalk is not ADA compatible. If you've walked it and someone's gone speeding down the hill next to you, and you're going around the telephone pole that's in the middle of the sidewalk, it's kind of spooky, and it's kind of a premier access. It just depends which way the people are going. Is there an event in the beach park? Do they want to go walk on the beach, or do they want to go down to something in the marina? And so I don't think it's an either or, I think it's a both.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to check to see if Councilmember Oxker has any questions before I go back to a second.
Levin, can you elaborate a little bit more on why is not in the historic registry?
Oh, why the property is not?
Councilmember, I really don't know why it's not, other than when they put everything else on the register, my guess would be it was only built in the 60s. There wasn't really any amenable fix, there's nothing really about it that stands out as something that would meet those criteria.
I mean, I think the general question that people have is the beach park as the Covenant Beach Church Camp was, to me, would seem that, any of the facility, any of the buildings in there, I mean, we've got buildings in there that are literally falling down that we have trouble, removing. But the Founders Lot, it just seems a little odd that they would make that distinction.
I wasn't here when that happened, and it was way before my time, Councilmember. I could do some research for you if you'd like me to.
Shouldn't point, but it's fine.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
If nobody else is interested in exploring this, it's fine to, let it go.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harris for your second time.
Will there be, I'm assuming there'll be some kind of internal SEPA process or in the demolition?
Councilmember Harris, absolutely. We will get all the same building permits anyone else would with the demolition, just like we do with all of our projects.
Yeah. My my question being, will parametrics or whoever, I look at it as something that, you know, the salmon might enjoy. And just, is there any opportunity for that project to be, you know, promoted as actual salmon recovery?
Well, Councilmember Harris, I do think if we're removing any coverage from the creek itself, it's beneficial to the fishery itself. So it is a beneficial use towards the fishery, although that's not the primary reason why we're doing it. Doing it more for public safety and other issues. But it is definitely in line with the overall goal of the beach park, which is to make the estuary much more acceptable to the fish.
Thank you.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if we can do this tonight, but I would support going ahead with the demolition, or do we need to make that an official agenda piece to come back at a set time?
If we get council feedback that there's comfort with this, when it will come back to you is when we have the bid. So it'll be for the bid award for the contract.
Mm-hmm. I'm comfortable.
How about some hand raises? Are we? Sounds pretty good. It sounds like you have at least 6 hand raises that are okay. Councilmember Oxiger, did you want to raise a hand or lower your hand? Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Our second item for discussion here in our study session is the Seahawks Blue Friday Proclamation, given staff presentation today by City Attorney Mr. George.
I think the proclamation's in the packet, so go Hawks. I think that's the extent of it.
Councilmember Nutting.
I move to pass the proclamation declaring Friday, February 6, 2026 as Blue Friday in the city of Des Moines in recognition of the Seattle Seahawks advancing to the Super Bowl.
I see a second from Councilmember Steinmetz. Yes. All in, or any discussion, or can we go to a vote? All in favor, please raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Oxger, Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Desmone, Councilmember Nutting, and Councilmember Bloss, and myself. Motion passes. 7, there you go. Woo. And I get to read it now. Very exciting. Whereas the 2025-2026 Seattle Seahawks have set a franchise record with 14 regular season victories in their 50th season in the NFL, and whereas the 3 teams in the NFC with the best regular season records were all in the NFC West Division, making it the toughest division in the NFL, and whereas the Seattle Seahawks won the NFC West Division and secured the #1 seed in the playoffs with the best record in the NFC. And whereas the Seattle Seahawks defeated their fierce division rivals, the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams, in the playoffs to win the NFC Championship for the 4th time in franchise history. And whereas head coach Mike Macdonald, in just 2 years, has built the Seattle Seahawks into a Super Bowl caliber team on disciplined special teams, a bruising running game anchored by Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet, and an elite defense that rivals the famed Legion of Boom. And whereas the addition of the first-year quarterback Sam Darnold and has unlocked a potent passing attack to receivers Jackson and Njigba Rashid, and Rashid Shaheed, thank you, and Cooper Kupp. And whereas the Seattle Seahawks will compete against the New England Patriots on February 8th, 2026 in Super Bowl 60, and whereas we are the 12s whose loyalty and sheer volume were unsurpassed in professional sports. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Des Moines declare Friday, February 6, 2026, as Blue Friday in the city of Des Moines, and we encourage our residents to celebrate the Seattle Seahawks and their fans throughout the weekend on their quest to win their second Super Bowl championship. Signed this 5th day of February, 2026, Yoshiko Grace Matsui, Mayor. Thank you very much. Okay, I want to make sure we are set up to have our guests come in and talk to us next about item number 3, long-range budget forecast analysis presentation with Catherine Caffrey leading us.
We will pull that up. Also, Mayor, do you want to mention what's happening tomorrow at noon?
I do. Thank you.
While we're on the Seahawks item?
I would love to. So tomorrow here at City Hall, starting at 12 o'clock with a special time at 12:30, we will be raising the 12 flag here to celebrate the impending victory of the Seahawks in the Super Bowl 60. And I hope that you all might swing by and join us, and we can practice making as much noise as possible for when that victory occurs.
Awesome. And before we get started with long-term budget, Tim just told me that the attorney who will remain nameless, who drafted this originally, talked a bunch of smack about the other team, and Tim cut it out of the proclamation.
Oh, thank you.
Something about professionalism.
Something.
And I just want to let you know that that was in there apparently in an earlier draft.
It was all subtext. We got it. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, this item is sort of part one of what the second part will be in a moment. So for those of you that were on the council in September, you received a presentation about the city's long-range financial forecast. It really focused on the next 5-ish years and the general fund. And it really shows sort of, I think, some of the struggles the city, like many Washington cities, is facing for the next few years. Following that, I got a request to have us look at the Surface Water Management Fund, as well as the Marina Enterprise Fund, and take a longer view out. And so that is what this presentation will be. So Todd and Luke are here from FCS. They're going to go through this presentation about the forecast, and then part 2, which is the next item, Jeff will be talking about some potential ways we can explore generating revenue. So Todd and Luke.
Thank you. I'll ask Luke to pull up the pres. I think you have it, Luke.
Yep.
As Catherine mentioned, FCS, we're an independent financial consulting firm based in Redmond, Washington, and been working throughout the Northwest for 40 plus years. And I've done several projects over the years with your fine city. And in the fall, we were asked to do two things. I think some of you, certainly half of you were there. One was to look at the general fund and forecast it out about 10 years. And also to do what's called a development impact study, where we looked at the fiscal impacts of different types of development and concluded that certain types of redevelopment and new development generate more positive impacts to the general fund than others. All that information is available for background purposes. We have presentations on that back in February. And tonight we have about a 15-minute presentation. You can go to the first slide, Luke. And then we'll open it up for questions. So our objective this time around was really kind of a quick study to extend the prior forecast we did for another 5 to 10 years. So we're going out at least 15 years now in the future in our forecasts, in our models for the city. And we're also expanding the scope to not only include the general fund, but also to include 2 enterprise funds, the Surface Water Management Fund and the Marina Fund. So we're going to talk a little bit about those funds and how they shake out for the next 15 years. We used a conservative approach for forecasting revenues and expenses, follow best practices. We're going to stick with your current policy target of a 15% fund balance each year, 50% or more of the reoccurring operating expenses. And as I mentioned, we're extending the forecast out to 2040. And we're hopeful that this information will help you as a council understand the need for additional funding sources for the general fund, and also help you kind of be more proactive with the management of your two other enterprise funds. And because we're going so far out in the future, it's always good to remind everybody that uncertainty and risk, you know, the further we go out with the forecasts, is certainly introduced. The city derives about 1/3 of its revenues from sales taxes and B&O taxes, which tend to be a little less stable than property taxes and other revenue sources. So as we go further out, we don't really know, but we're sticking with very conservative forecasts, and we're going to go through the assumptions in the next few slides. Next slide. As I mentioned, we're following best practices to evaluate current and future fiscal conditions. We're identifying revenue and expenditure trends that could impact city policies. And this could become an annual thing you do as a city. I know you already go out 6 years in your required forecast policy for your biennial budget updates. But now you can also have the tool to go out 10, 15 years as you try to estimate longer term revenues and operating expenses, and help with your reserves and management of those reserves. The whole goal is to achieve a financial structural balance where your resources support your expenditures, and we understand the timing of capital improvements, so you can time those with fund balances in your enterprise funds to limit issuance of future debt. Jumping to the conclusion, and we're going to come back to this at the end. Generally, and this is consistent with what we found in the fall, the general fund will definitely require some additional revenue to maintain current service levels and to keep a healthy fund balance. Fund balance should be adequate to about year 2029, 2030 under current conditions, but an additional $1 to $2 million annually would be needed to maintain your reserves and meet your reserve policies throughout the next 10+ years. So that's the key finding with the general fund. We'll talk about some assumptions there in a minute. The Surface Water Management Enterprise Fund is healthy. There's some policy rate increases which are keeping up with costs and operating expenses of the system. The fund should be able to dedicate rate revenues as needed for capital improvements without issuing additional debt, kind of as a pay-as-you-go approach. And new revenues would likely be needed if additional services are added to that fund. The Marina Fund is also expected to maintain a healthy fund balance over the forecast time frame. And because you have so many capital improvements that are probably going to be needed over the next 10 years for the marina, it's going to be critical to kind of look at the timing of the remaining reserves with regard to the timing of the capital improvements to determine whether additional debt service might be needed. And we did take a look at your current debt service requirements and how that timing reflects or is consistent with your operating revenues. We'll talk about all those things in more detail in the next few slides. And I'll ask Luke to dive into these details.
All right, so starting with the general fund, some assumptions that we're making as we go forward. We're assuming that sales tax revenue on average will have about a 4% increase. Property taxes, you'll be increasing by the state mandated 1%. And then we see that labor and benefits are kind of hovering between that 3 and 4% increases per year. So looking at where the money is coming from now, we see that there's a fairly equal split between property tax, sales tax, and utility taxes and franchise fees that make out just under about 75% of the current revenues, with the rest coming mainly from charges for services or rentals and B&O tax. That money is mostly being spent on public safety, followed by parks, and then legal services within the city. And so we see that where we're at now, we're projecting that the difference between revenues and expenditures is basically equal for this year. But as things get more expensive, because of inflation, the revenues do not keep up with those expenditures. And I think it's worth pausing here and kind of going back to something that Catherine said earlier. This is not an indictment on how the city is managing these funds. This is something that we would see with just about every Washington city or county. And it really kind of stems from that 1% limit on the property taxes. Because that 1% does not keep up with inflation most of the time. Looking at any local government, you're going to see kind of these expenditures just grow faster than revenues can. And so that creates a burden on every city to find either new revenues, new taxes, or to potentially have to cut services, which is not always feasible. So looking at it in a table, we have some numbers on what would be needed to meet these, to keep positive and maintain the fund balance minimums. We're estimating about $1 million per year would keep you positive through 2030. And $2 million would keep the city above its reserve target through 2036. To be above the main reserve target through 2040, we have about $3.5 million here. But as Todd said in kind of that first slide, I would recommend focusing more on the next 5-10 years rather than going out that far because of the uncertainty that is being introduced by looking out 15 years. So to recap, kind of where the general fund is at, we're escalating it based on the 2026 expenditure budget. Existing revenue sources will be under the council reserve target by fiscal year 2029 to 2030. Kind of that key cost drivers are mainly the public safety element and personnel cost increases over that time. And we would recommend that the council consider new revenue sources in the near term. Looking at the Surface Water Management Fund, we have kind of a modest account growth assumed of 0.2% each year. Inflation is at 3.5%, and labor and benefits are also in that 3.5% to 4%. So looking at the Surface Water Management Fund CIP first, this is kind of the main expenses that they will have coming up in the next 6 years. They're estimating to have $16.3 million in capital investment over that time, and most of that is going to be funded by rate revenues. So looking at this chart, we can see that if even at current revenues, this black line that goes straight across here, Even in the short term, that is above their operating expenses, so they have room to put aside cash for capital. When we introduce those policy-induced rate increases of 3.65%, we follow this dash line, and we can see that they have that they'll be maintaining that ability to fund capital through rates. So currently, the Surface Water Management Fund is healthy. It has a budget surplus that allows it to save money for capital expenditures. They do have annual increases of 3.65% expected over this planning period. And because of that, we expect them to carry a healthy balance over the planning period while having that revenue for their capital improvement plan. That said, if new services are being added, like maintaining open space, then new revenues may be needed. Moving into Marina, we have kind of the same assumptions that we were just looking at, with mortgage revenue growth assumed at 5.5%. Currently, the Marina has some debt that it from general obligation bonds. The existing limited term bonds are being retired in 2028. And then the principal payments on 2023 bonds are beginning in 2029. So we can see that they will be maintaining some debt over the period. That said, they are still in a healthy position currently, and with expected revenue growth, they will be able to cover their operating expenditures and debt service while having that room for capital as well. So currently, the Marina Fund is operating with a budget surplus of over $1 million. This surplus allows them to put aside money for these capital improvements. Some capital expenditures over the next 15 years include improvements and maintenance to the seawall and bulkhead, which we're expecting to be approximately $26 million. The fund balance is expected to decline a little bit over this time, just to cover those capital expenditures, but not in a way that we find concerning. Based on project timing, the Marina may want to consider taking on more debt just to smooth that those expenditures over time. But overall, the Marina Fund is expected to carry a healthy balance and handle the expected capital improvement plan. So that kind of circles us back to where we started with kind of overall findings for each of these funds. Do we have any questions?
Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, with regards to the general fund, you're assuming current levels of service, but I didn't see, and it wasn't visible either, so what were the population assumptions? Because I think the mandates from the state are that we have to increase our population by raising the density, which would drive higher levels of service and higher cost of providing that service.
Yeah, I'll take that one, Luke. I think what we concluded from the development fee study is that certain types of residential help the general fund more than others. High density, mixed use, surface parked apartments, basically, and low density single family. You're right, they tend to have a more significant negative impact on the general fund than does mixed use development, housing over commercial in many cases. So we don't know exactly how land use changes will impact overall general fund projections, but that's one reason why I think expenses are outpacing revenues in your city. It's because residential development is growing faster than non-residential development. It's kind of baked into our forecast.
Yeah, I guess, did you take into consideration the requirements from the state legislature? Or is it just up to us how we meet those requirements that will ultimately affect the general fund?
Yeah,
They did not, we did not talk about that.
it's hard to know, but yeah, that's gonna, it's gonna vary project by project, development by development, the extent to which it impacts the general fund. And there are other funding techniques cities use with regard to, mitigation fees and impact fees to help with the impacts specific developments have on the city, transportation development or benefit districts and tax increment financing districts and things like that can help focus revenue on areas that are growing and require infrastructure to accommodate that new development. And those are certainly things we can talk about going forward.
Councilmember Desmone.
Thank you for this information. I will continue to remind the public that the B&O tax goes 100% back to our city. I know you were talking about housing and that type of growth. Would we also be looking to expand in the downtown area as well for more businesses and B&O tax? That would be another route to be taking as well.
Yeah, definitely. As you can add commercial almost of any kind, whether it be office, lodging, retail, service, that tends to have a net positive benefit to the city.
Councilmember Blas.
Yeah, thank you. For the general fund, so you're saying that we would need an additional $1 million to have the ending fund balance just to be positive in 2030, but to hit our target ending fund balance of 16.67%, we would need an additional $6.6 million per year.
Well, I think that's a cumulative number you're looking at, the 6.6.
Yeah, okay.
So you'd have to divide that out over 6 years. That's how we get to, between 1 and 2 million.
Well, because it's the ending fund balance baseline in 2030 is minus 1.6 million, so you need 1.6 just to be above zero.
Yeah, but if you started getting that money next year and you start to invest it, it'll grow.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, just wanted to check to see if Councilmember Oxiger had any questions before I go back. No, okay. Any other questions before we move on? Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us tonight. I really appreciate the additional information.
Thank you. Go Hawks.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Luke. So now we'll transition to Jeff's presentation about revenue.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Jeff Friend, Finance Director, with the presentation on revenue enhancement options. It actually is an update. Budget challenges and efforts. So why are we talking about this revenue enhancement options? And this is really for the people who did not see the last presentation. If you're turning in right now, the city faces budget challenges primarily due to a structural imbalance. That our ongoing revenues are not keeping pace with our ongoing expenses. This is primarily due to property tax, which is our number one revenue source, being capped at 1% growth per year. And in this decade, we've seen that inflation has been much higher than 1%. So the city's expenditures and the cost of our expenditures and services are going up at a pace that our revenue is not matching. The 2025-26 budget had difficult decisions that had to be made during that process. So it required tough expenditure reductions that impacted service levels, including frozen police positions, elimination of animal control, and staffing reductions. Reduction to human services funding, elimination of downtown beautification, closing of the Redondo substation for the police, and also we had to find other ways to create internal efficiencies. And then, so that's, on that side of it, that's a lot of cost control, but the other side of the coin is having new revenue. So new revenue creation, we also looked at warehouse tax and fee adjustments. So that was during 2024 when we worked on that budget. And the current challenges now are just long-term financial sustainability. That is a very high priority for the city. And also, council received updated financial forecasts from FCS just now, which discussed that in more depth. So as I said, there's two sides to the same coin, managing costs. So we've been focused on cost containment, creating efficiencies, and also capital asset maintenance scheduling. So we're doing our best to keep our costs down and finding ways to create efficiency, save money. And the other side of the coin, revenue opportunities, and that's what this presentation is focused on, exploring sustainable revenue enhancement options, which is a reflection of work that staff has been doing the last several months as far as focused on bringing more opportunities to council. This chart or graph should look familiar as we saw it probably about 10 minutes ago. This is the general fund forecast in millions. This is a 10-year forecast. It has 2026 as the first year and then goes out 10 years after it through to 2036. What stands out about this graph is the ending fund balance baseline, which is in red, as you can see kind of declines to a greater degree year after year as revenues and does not keep up with expenditures. So you can see the total expenditures for each year is the yellow bar. The total revenues is the it looks like a darker black bar, which are vertical for every year. So you can see that the expenditures are always more than the revenue, and as you go out in time to 2036, that gap gets bigger and bigger. The target ending fund balance is the green line, which seems pretty steady and flat across the graph, which is above that red line. And then the additional funds required, you can see that grows over time as well, because as the hole gets deeper, you need more to fill it in. So that's a visual representation of the budget challenges facing the city and the forecast based on current trends if expenditures continue to outpace revenue. This is a more numeric representation. This is the general fund financial forecast, which also came from the FCS presentation, where you remember they mentioned the city needs approximately $1 million more in revenue annually starting this year to be positive through 2030. After 2030, $2 million annually would keep the city above its reserve target until 2036. And then after that, it grows even larger at $3.5 million annually, would maintain reserves through 2040. And so as it was pointed out, in 2030, in the middle of this schedule, the ending fund balance, which is in red, you can see it go negative 1.6 million in 2030. So the 6.6 million would be, if we had those funds throughout the next 5 years, would bring that 1.6 up to zero, and then we'd have the target ending balance of the 5 million that you can see above the blue 6.6. Of course, when you talk about a government needing additional revenue, you have to recognize that that revenue is coming from the community, the business community, and which can be a challenge. So these costs, we do acknowledge that they directly impact our residents and businesses. And the financial challenges our city faces require stable and sustainable funding, and they're necessary to sustain the level of service our community expects and deserves. And the priority is to share this information in a transparent and accountable manner. So the process for looking at the revenue enhancement is we've been general fund focused. Not every item is related to the general fund, but our focus tends to be on the general fund. It's a little challenging when you can get a new revenue source and then the state restricts it for a certain purpose, which takes it out of the general fund. So we have, for the general fund, there's not many choices, but we do have some, and then a couple of additional. The general fund, it should be noted, is the city's primary source for delivering day-to-day services to our community. So police are in the general fund, park services are in the general fund, the administration for running those programs are in the general fund. So the day-to-day services received by the community, the day-to-day operations of the city, that's all centered in the general fund, and that's why the general fund is so critical. Property tax, as I mentioned, is the largest general fund revenue source, and it's capped at 1% annual growth, which lags behind the rising costs of providing services. And to maintain and improve the services the city provides, we need to address immediate funding gaps and long-term sustainability. So our options, they focus on revenue options currently available under state law. So this is a timeline of what we have presented to council and council action September. So this, as I mentioned, is an update. The original presentation was presented to council on September 25th. We had a list of revenue enhancement options that were presented to council to gauge interest in which ones to pursue. All of them proved interesting except for one. October 9th, council approved a 0.01% increase to sales tax allowed by new state legislation that restricts the revenue to funding public safety. So this is the public safety sales tax that we've been discussing over the last few months. October 23rd, council directs staff to notify eligible utility providers of the city's intent to renegotiate existing franchise agreements. One of the options that were on the list in September 25th was opening those up and seeing if there was a way to increase revenue through that, amongst other things that can be negotiated. So council directed staff to open those up for negotiation. November 6th, council discusses a commercial parking tax. Also, at this point, we were staff were bringing items up one by one, and during the discussion of that particular meeting, it was expressed by council like, well, we'd rather see an overview of everything. So November 6th, we did have one conversation about parking tax, but then we were directed to come back, which is what we're doing now, to give an overview of all the options. Which again, council directs staff to create a draft ordinance that would raise car tab fees to $50, and council requests staff to return, as I mentioned, with an overview of all options scenarios. So since September, some items have been completed, restricted funds analysis. So we took a look at other funds that are outside the general fund, see if was any cash available there, or if everything was being strategically used. We did find, and this was in the budget amendment process, there's about $113,000 in a debt service fund that was available. But a lot of that kind of analysis has to do with, do we have opportunities to use one kind of money instead of another? So, maybe we can use, traffic benefit district funds instead of real estate excise tax funds, which is an ongoing conversation. So we're continuing to do that analysis just to make sure that we're being strategically optimal with the choice of funds we use and where we use them. Square footage warehouse tax audit. So we did complete that. We did have to reduce our budgeted amount and expectations of how much we would bring in through that new tax that was implemented last year. It's down to about $515,000 a year, and we've worked to collect a lot more of or engage with the businesses to get them to comply with the code that prescribes this tax. So as a result, the collections of the tax had increased. Telecommunications lease audit had been done. Nothing came of that. We did not find any savings or new revenue opportunities with that audit. Implementation of marina rate increases. So marina rates are increasing for moorage, which is impacting the marina budget in a positive way. I believe it's 15% for old slips and 30% on the new docks is the new rate, or the rate increases. Lease of Stephen J. Underwood Park, so Perfect Game, it was, council approved them leasing those parks, which would also save the city funds on maintenance of the park. And that there is the public safety sales tax, which previously mentioned was approved by council, but is still pending state approval. We are set up with the Department of Revenue to collect that tax, but still seeking approval, as is almost every other city with the Criminal Justice Training Center. Though Kent and King County just got approved. So at least somebody's, oh, I shouldn't say that. Oh, they were not really approved. I read something wrong. Okay, never mind. Strike that from the record then. I guess you don't believe everything you read. In progress. So these are items that we are still working on. Use of opioid settlement funds. We have about $203,000 of opioid settlement funds that the city has received. We have not spent anything that we have received. We're working on finding out, the best use of those funds, and they are restricted to the purpose of, dealing with opioid addiction. Cost recovery of credit card fees is in progress. It's not as simple as we originally thought. There are compliance issues that we have to make sure that we're complying with credit card companies, which take those compliance issues very seriously. So we're working on that and working through that. Open space transfers to the swim utility. That is a council update in March. It's where the Service Water Management Fund can take ownership, can be transferred of some non-operating open space, and then the Service Water Management can take over the maintenance for that, which would save the general fund maintenance costs on those spaces. Water sewer franchise agreements, those are in progress, I guess, with negotiations on those. And then 2 council updates coming this spring would deal with the 24-hour school zone cameras and stuff. So that one is, instead of school zone cameras being on just at certain times during the day, they could be on 24 hours for speeding safety purposes. And additional traffic safety cameras, again, that's an addition of speed cameras with an update coming in spring. And this last slide needs additional council direction. So we wanted to confirm with council about the increase on the car tab fees from $40 to $50, as the city is allowed to raise it up to $50. An impact fee analysis, which I believe is pending a study, so that nothing is pressing on that one in the moment.
We'll be looking for direction whether or not you want to pursue a study. But when we go through your model, we can talk about that.
Right. And then an increase in Redondo and Marina paid parking rates. And Catherine just mentioned the model. I'm very excited tonight because I don't just get to show PowerPoint slides, but we get to use Excel. So that's very exciting for an accountant. So these are the 3 items that we are seeking direction on. And in terms of the overview, when we were encouraged to come back with not just one at a time, but everything with an update, I think part of that desire was to see how everything, if you did one thing and not another, how does that affect the general fund? And so we built an Excel model that will say, if you want to do this, then this is the impact on the general fund. If you want to do half of this and not that, then we can show that. So we'll bring that up right now as this slide is complete. So, except my mouse is kind of slow. Yeah. So on this model, what we're looking at here is we have a few boxes, and the three on the top, all with the blue color filled in headers, all relate to the general fund. So the one on the top is the list of financial strategies. So you have open spaces, transfer to swim utility. We're going to zoom a little bit. Okay. Yeah. The second one is the adjustment to utility franchise fees, 24-hour traffic safety cameras in school zones, additional traffic safety cameras, an increase in car tab fees, an increase in parking paid fees. And then we have a yes/no column and 100%. So I think one of the issues we want to see what the financial impact is of each one, what numbers are associated with these as far as the impact goes. Second schedule is the impact of financial strategies. So here we'd have it broken out by year. So if you say, yes, I want to, do one of these above, it'll come down here as a number. And then this one here, general fund balance summary. And then it will fill in this row, and then you can see where it is as far as our target is concerned. And these numbers are pulled from the FCS forecast because obviously we haven't budgeted for these years yet. So that's the data that we're using. On the last one, the green schedule, this is the impact of financial strategies on funds that are not the general fund. So I'm going to fill in just so we can see the revenue that we actually are talking about. So I'll just fill in a yes for each one of these. So open spaces, that's $100,000 savings that we expect for the general fund. And then for the utility tax rates, if the rates increase 6%, so that's our assumption, a 6% increase, we'd expect that to be $900,000. Then the 24-hour traffic safety cameras in school zones, we expect annually impact of $1.2 million. And then additional traffic safety cameras, we plugged in $2 million for that, so that's why we have a 3.2 down there. Increase in car tab fees. At $50, we'd expect $250,000 more per year. And then an increase in parking fees, I believe, is $50,000. So this, if council is interested in each of these at 100% full throttle, and the impact for the general fund, you'd see would be a little over $1 million per year. Our target, we're about $690,000 below target, but for each year you can see it growing. So we would need additional revenue in addition to these options. So it doesn't fill the gap completely. And then on these other funds at the bottom here, you can see they have an impact on these funds. And this would come into place, as I mentioned, where you look at what kind of money you can use where. So if we had additional transportation benefit district fees and revenue, we could maybe use that in some capital way where we're using REIT right now. So you can move money around in a more strategic way that would be beneficial. So I think
Mayor and Council will pause here. What we want to do now is open it up for your discussion, feedback, or questions. This model, as Jeff just showed you, is live, so we can play with it or use different assumptions as helpful for you all.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Desmone.
Thank you. I had sat through one of these before, I believe. I just had 3 questions in one question, hopefully. We referenced when the last time was we raised parking at the marina. I can't remember how many years ago.
Well, because paid parking only went in a few years ago with that equipment, it hasn't raised.
Yeah, okay.
So previously the council talked about implementing a tax on paid parking. which I think really at the end, that's when the conversation got really muddled, and I think there wasn't a huge appetite for that. That being said, the city manager has the authority to increase parking rates, and we can explore that if there's an appetite for that.
But tonight, we're talking about the tax on that.
No, we're talking about just we're taking the
general.
tax off the table because it got very
Right.
convoluted. So we're just sort of saying, like, hey, here's a lever that has a limited impact, but it's something we can look at that just administration can do.
Okay. And then, we're talking about cameras being turned on all the time and additional cameras. I'm understanding there's a cost for additional cameras.
So in April, we will be bringing you a presentation all about cameras and additional camera locations.
Okay.
There's a cost, but the revenue covers it. So for the sake of tonight and simplicity, look at them just as revenue.
Okay.
But you can't put them everywhere. There's a lot of criteria as to the data you have to meet. And so we'll be showing you potential locations in April. So the numbers that we've used here are estimates that are grounded in reality, but we don't have, like, we'll bring you more information on April for you to consider.
Exactly. Okay, and then I'm sorry, one more. So if we're looking at gaining costs from the additional cameras possibly of people speeding, what would the decrease look like as the learning curve hits? Or are we just like?
You just said gaining costs, but do you mean gaining like revenue?
I'm sorry, revenue.
Okay. So we will talk more about this in April, but the rule of thumb, and jump in where I'm wrong, Tim, is like whatever happens in the first few months, over time, it depends on the location, you retain between 20 and 30% over time.
Yeah, it goes way down. We look at the original study, and then we'll knock that down all the way 95% down.
Right.
And then you're at 5%. And then it goes even lower than that, right? But the numbers that we had from our original study were like, per camera, it was like $300,000 a month, right? I mean, it goes way down, but we still, and we'll present on this, the numbers that were there, we felt like that number that Jeff put in of 2 million was something that would kind of level off.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Blas.
Hi, what did you say again, the increase in card tab fees from 40 to 50 would bring in?
That would be 250,000.
Okay. And then, not directly related to all these, but how much room do you think we have to expand the warehouse tax? I know it's a new tax, but over the years, it's probably a way to increase that tax for those warehouses. Do you think we have room to do it? Presumably, at some point, it's too high and they're going to leave, but we're right by the airport. There's got to be some room to.
Yeah, in the code, it does increase 3%. I think.
Oh, so your model.
Yeah, so that has, that would have been.
Do you think we could increase more? Do you think, what's your view there?
Yeah, I think the first step is to get everybody paying it, and then.
Yeah.
We could, I think what Councilmember Blas is getting at is changing the rate, the tax.
Yeah.
Yes, we could change that and go up. It would be a code amendment. And when it was implemented, Matt had done a lot of research on what other cities are charging. It's a really wide range. But yes, that is a tool you could look at.
Thank you.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, I just, the 24-hour traffic safety cameras in school zones assumption. The speed that's allowed in school zones varies when the school's in session and not. So what is it that those would be capturing on a 24-hour basis, and would it be able to adjust the speed up and down that it was looking for or not?
Yeah, that's what would happen. It would be the school zone speed when the lights are flashing, and then when those turn off, it would be 35 or 30 or whatever the normal speed limit is. And our vendor can do that.
They can.
They've done it in other cities, yeah.
Right. Is that an extra expense, or is that just the built-in?
That is built in. So we wouldn't pay any extra for the cameras because they're already there.
All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, I thought I was going to have all kinds of very deep, but regarding the school cameras, is the vendor able to estimate the benefit of just per camera? Because,
Yeah, they do studies at each site, and then we get monthly updates on specific cameras, how many infractions that they issue?
I'm just, I think the irritability factor will be highly variable depending on some of the cameras. So I would just be very interested to know how much actual money they bring in. Thank you.
Councilmember Oxker, do you have any questions at this time? Yes.
Yes, I do. With regard to the warehouse tax, how much additional tax are we expecting to come in with the implementation of the Business Park West properties? And is that factored into these numbers?
Yeah, it's not factored into these numbers. I probably have to get back to you on that. I think we might have looked at that when we did the square tax originally.
It's, Tim just told me we did not factor that into this, because we don't know what it'll be leased at. I think as that project nears completion, we can factor it in. Or we could look at it as sort of, you know, maybe that helps offset areas that may not meet performance. So.
I think that's it. Any others? Oh, Councilmember Bloss.
A quick one on the parking fees. So you're saying if we increase them, we get about 50,000 a year. Presumably, if we increase the parking fees, less people are going to park. Are we including that in those?
That was just a placeholder number.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
So, you know, we have to put something in as a placeholder.
Okay.
I think to your point, and also in addressing the question of the traffic cams, those are dynamic numbers, right? Because we are looking for compliance of folks to comply with the speed limit and hopefully learn that they will get ticketed for an infraction if they're speeding, and so it would hopefully decrease speed during the enforcement of that, which is good. It increases the safety of those areas, but it's not a sustainable, predictable amount of money, or in fact it is a predictable, but it's a decreasing amount of money that comes over time. Any other questions? Steinmetz. Councilmember Steinmetz, thank you.
Just, you made me think of something else, which is, you know, when you're issuing citations, there's a cost to our courts. Right. And is that already factored in or not?
No, it is not factored in.
Again, though, we're going to be diving deep into cameras in April. And so tonight, I think we wanted you to see sort of the menu of options that we're working on. I think we also wanted you to see how even if you maxed everything out, we are still not going to meet what we need to. And then if you could go back to the slide on where we're looking for direction, that could maybe help narrow that down.
I can remind folks, it's an increase in car tab fees, an impact fee analysis, and increase in Redondo Marina paid parking rates. Councilmember Simons.
The study that's required for the impact fee analysis, approximately what would the cost of that be, and what would the hopefully what would we gain from that?
Yeah, it would be probably around $25,000, and it would yield, if we were going to do a parks impact fee, because we already have other impact fees, what's an appropriate rate for that?
All right. Did you want to go over these one at a time to get some direction on them? What would be helpful for you?
That would be fine.
So I believe we already had a vote on the increase in car tab fees.
Correct.
In the menu of revenue items, enhancement items that we looked at last, was it November?
November 6th.
Thank you. So I think that's going forward.
So so I think we wanted to, we have new people on here, and so we wanted to kind of like level set, hey, this is coming your way, so it doesn't surprise you. We are working on drafting that, and we will have that in the next meeting or two. Not next week, but it'll be after that. So we're confirming, everybody's like, yep, I remember that. Okay.
Great. Thoughts on impact fee analysis? I'm seeing some. I'm seeing some head nods, enough head nods. And increase in Redondo Marina paid parking rates, not the tax, but the rates, which we have authority to do.
And we'll discuss the actual rate increase later.
The rates are actually set by the city manager.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I think what I want to know is that something that you want me to explore within reason? I mean, as a kind of just a level set for everybody, the current rates are very, very inexpensive. It's $2.50 for the first 2 hours, $1.50 for each additional hour with a max of $10 a day. And that's if you don't have a pass. So if we were going to look at an increase, I would definitely do it what is reasonable. I'm not going to double it or something. But I think we want to get, is there an appetite for me to explore that? Okay.
All right. Is that enough direction for you to move forward?
Yes. And then also as a reminder, we are working on the utility franchise fees. And so that committee will be meeting probably in the next few weeks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. We're at the end of our agenda, unless you had something else you wanted to add for those. No. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate you attending tonight and sitting in on our study session. Our next meeting will be a regular City Council meeting on February 12th, 2026. Is there a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Nutting? All in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye. All right. Thank you very much.